that he has. This is from F.O. Matheson, who was Skull and Bones, 1923. My father was too. To Donald Ogden Stewart, Skull and Bones, 1916, an older guy. In regard to Matheson, they called him Matty, Matty's upcoming appearance before the House Committee on Un-American Activities. So he's writing to his other Skull and Bones buddy, you know, soothing his concerns, saying, don't worry, we'll make it. We're going to get by here. You know, we're going to get our agenda in, basically. So Matheson says, quote, as long as we have somebody from Bones, himself, right, who can bring pressure on the committee, I should think we'll be all right. So that's a very important quote. Now, Sutton goes on here, and he says, for over 170 years, these people have met in secret. From out of their initiates come presidents, senators, judges, cabinet secretaries, and plenty of spooks, CIA. They are titans of finance and industry, and they have just recently installed a third Skull and Bones president of the United States, George Jr., right? George W. Bush's secret name is Temporary. His father, George H.W. Bush's Bones name is Magog, and his grandfather, Prescott Sheldon Bush, stole for the order one of their prized possessions, Geronimo's skull. But the order of Skull and Bones secrets have always been safe with the press, of which much they owned. They owned, and that's why I think earlier you saw in this video, I mentioned that, or maybe I didn't, I've been writing letters to the press since 1975 that, with a direct quote from a communist, that regionalism is communism. And I've had other articles published, but they would never go near that. Either they would take that quote out, because that's a quote from a communist writer for the Daily World, writing for their own journal, the Daily World. And so when you talk about the control of the press, it's complete, the major media. I don't have to tell you folks that probably, but anyway. All right, no, Skull and Bones, Bonesmen, here's a little list. Time Life Fortune's Henry Luce, Newsweek's E. Roland Bunny Harriman, right? Cowles Communications' Alfred Cowles, National Review's William Buckley, boy, he took us to the cleaners, didn't he? Atlantic Monthly's R.W. Davenport, I guess Buckley was the one that managed to get the conservatives in line, so they're supporting a planned economy and all, right? He said that he said that John Kenneth Galbraith was one of his best friends and he admired him, so,
Did he repudiate the Birchers?
Oh, yes, yes, went after the Birchers. He did terrible things, Buckley. Atlantic Monthly's Davenport, among others. If the order is mentioned in the establishment press at all, Bones is defined as just a staid wayside for students. Its glory faded. This book is extremely important. You can go on the internet to get it. You said Alex has got it, is that right?
I think we do.
You're right. Anthony Sutton was educated at the University of London, Göttingen, and California. While research fellow at the prestigious Hoover Institute, he produced the monumental 3-volume series, Western Technology and Soviet Economic Development. Other books include The Best Enemy Money Can Buy, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, Wall Street and Hitler, and many others. All right, this is a picture of my grandfather, Samuel Clifton Thompson, born in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And this picture is taken just before he went out to South Africa as a mining engineer to open up the gold mines in South Africa. I might point out that he was the first member in the family from the Order of Skull and Bones. You'll be seeing later, you're going to see a picture of Grandpa and my father that's coming up.
Put down a little bit.
Okay.
There you go. Right there. It's perfect. Thank you.
And he lived out there from around 1897 and was there during the Boer War, and they returned in the breakout of the First World War I. My father was born in South Africa, obviously, and my grandfather met a lovely gal from Australia. That was my grandmother, and this is a very interesting story. She had come over with her father and 12 siblings on a sailing ship from Australia to Cape Town. My great-grandfather from Australia had emigrated from England and was the clerk of the works or something in Melbourne, Australia. And they had all those children, and can you imagine traveling on a sailing ship back in 1895 or something with all those children? And anyway, my grandfather somehow met, we don't know how, my grandmother. And they were married in Johannesburg in 1902. And he was a member of the order at Yale, and he was very close to Sir A. Bailey and some of the Fabian socialists. I don't really know what role he had in the activities of the order, but I would imagine some, because it was pretty big time gold mining, and he was very instrumental in opening up the mines there. So that's Grandpa Thompson. Here is a picture of the same Grandpa a little bit later with my father and my sister, Victoria. And that's Grandpa. He's being very grandfatherly. This is probably around 1930, this picture. And that's my dad holding on to my sister, my dad Clifton, who subsequently was tapped for the order for his class at Yale. And with Grandpa, the one that I spoke to you about, who was the mining engineer that went from Pennsylvania to South Africa to open the gold mines in the late 1800s. This is an interesting picture here, which shows, I think that this looks like a bunch of skull and bones friends. I do believe. I'm going to show you the picture and then I will identify a bit for you. The one in the front row is Charles Spofford. And then we have my father. I'll explain a little bit. It's difficult to hold this up. But the one in the front row in the middle is Charles Spofford, a very close friend of my father's. And I really like Charles Spofford a lot. He ended up being the legal counsel from Davis Polk, Wardwell, Sunderland, and Kendall, for the Suez Canal Company, and many, many other high positions. He rose to the top, getting all sorts of honorary medals from foreign governments in Europe and everywhere, and counsel on foreign relations, and a lawyer, and a very, very decent, nice man. He close to my father. He died about 25 years ago, I guess. Interesting man. He was born in California, I believe, and unlike the other Bones characters that were in that class, friends of my father's, he had not been to prep school, one of the fancy prep schools on the East Coast. He went to public school in California, which I do believe they must have had extremely good public schools back then, because Chuck Spofford was quite a scholar, and he was a very good musician. And very high up he became after World War II, which he served in Europe as a lieutenant or something. After he got out, he was promoted way high up to one of the top positions in NATO, the North American Treaty Organization, and went on to be very influential in diplomatic circles. This is coming from being a boy in the public school system in California, rising to just really the highest heights imaginable. So there's Chuck. The other members that are shown there are close friends of my father's, Rebel McCallum and Fred Haynes, I think. I'm not going to tell you where they all are. My father is in the picture somewhere there in the second row, I think. And Edwin Blair, who was called Mr. Yale always because he was a great fundraiser for Yale. So he was Mr. Yale. He was also the gentleman that invited my dad to go out to Bohemian Grove for 1 week or whatever it was. That it was through Edwin Blair that my father did go out there, and when he returned, you know, he he wasn't terribly impressed with what was going on there. He said the food was excellent, the lectures were pretty good, everything was done very nicely, but he would never go back. So I'm making excuses for my dad because I don't think he was ever really very happy with the agenda, the Yale agenda, the orders agenda, although he stayed close to his friends. As you can see in this picture, they're all having a very good time on someone's boat or on the dock somewhere. This is the Skull and Bones grandfather clock. These clocks were given to members of the order when they got married. And my father was married in 1927, I believe, and he ordered the clock from a clockmaker in South Carolina, and I think that the order pays for the clock. And it was a gift, and all of them receive a clock when they get married. I believe that's the case. And we had it in our house from the time I was born, of course, and I remember it best because it's so mellow, and I would, as a young child, you know, waiting for Santa Claus to arrive, go to bed at night, and the clock would, you know, go off at every hour. And my mom and dad, of course, were putting things under the tree and giving Santa Claus his peanut butter sandwich and banana. And I was sleeping and listening to the clock. And then finally around, you know, 5, it would strike 5, then 6, and I'd know, well, I can get up now. And I'd run down, and Santa Claus had been there, and the sandwich had been eaten, and the clock would strike 6:30, and then everybody would have to come down and deal with me. So I just have great memories of the clock. And what the significance is with the clock, Dad used to always say, he was very firm about that. He never told us why, but don't ever let the clock wind down. Keep the clock wound sharp. And always keep it 5 minutes ahead. And what that means, maybe